So thanks for all of you attending here for the best conference you're going to go to, best RS you'll ever be at, and you have to put up with me. But on a serious point, there is a serious point at most political events, like for our sales and your sales being here and just looking around, seeing how many old faces haven't seen in a while. Some of you see all the time, and so anyway, you're all welcome. And time doesn't allow us, unfortunately, for a Q&A after the speakers. And there's a particularly well-known person here speaking, and I don't want you rushing up to get photographs and autograph, but I'll do it outside when I'm finished. Do you think I was talking to you?
No, that's the ground.
Come here, P. The theme for this session will be a celebration of resistance. At the closed morning session, members voted and passed a range of motions. Two of these motions read, "This RS sends solidarity to oppressed peoples across the world. We declare particular support for those engaged in progressive and national liberation struggles and reiterate our recognition of the right of oppressed peoples to employ all necessary means in pursuit of their objective. And this RS recognises the genocide of the Zionist regime in Gaza and the occupation of Palestine. We support the right of the Palestinian people to resist and send solidarity to all resistant fighters engaged in their fight for freedom. We send solidarity to all those involved in active resistance against the Zionist regime at home, abroad, and particularly in Palestine. Victory to the resistance, victory to Palestine." Given, as we all know, what's in the news over the past 2 years and more, because looking around the room here, I've been to many of the protests with a lot of you over the years in support of the Palestinian right to a state, not two states, a state. And as we've seen over the past 2 days, we as Irish Republicans and Socialists and supporters of the resistance in Palestine, we have to be careful what we, as Irish people, we can't be judgmental about what is happening in regards to these so-called negotiations. And we all watch the news every day. We're on our phones, social media, and what have you, and we see exactly what Trump, Starmer, Van der Leyen, and others, I have to watch my language here, other people that with no hard connive, the Brits, we only look at our own struggle here, look at the connivance for 800 years. And I know it's not going to be any, because I'm looking around, there's a few Palestinian comrades here, and it's no consolation for what we're seeing every single day on our TVs, what's happening in, especially in Gaza. And when we look at our own history, when we take from over 800 years, and then especially around the time of Cromwell, during the 1788 rebellion in Court of Moore, our ancestors were nearly wiped off the face of the earth. And thankfully, over those years, and I have to be careful what I'm going to be saying here, because of whatever, that we were never defeated. Certain people were defeated. That's what they wanted to take on board. That's up for them. But we're not here to criticise that, but we all have opinions on what is happening here today in Ireland. And when we look at what is happening in Palestine, it's makes us all so angry. And it's right that we be angry. It's right that we take the streets and whenever we can have direct action against the supporters of the scum who are butchering thousands of people in Palestine. It is right that we be angry. I just got a very fitting, very welcoming statement from a good friend of mine who contacted a friend of his, and given the fact that this man, Salah Hamouri, had to be especially given over what's happened over the past 24 hours. It was hard for a statement to be put it, but he did send a statement. There's Salah Hamouri. He's an ex-political prisoner. He done 9 years in Zionist jails and also spent time on hunger strike. He was forced into exile in 2020, and he is currently a lawyer for Palestinian prisoners. And here's a statement that he kindly sent to us. Dear comrades, we wish to extend a hand of friendship and solidarity to everyone at the Lasair Ard Fheis today. We want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to the Irish men and women who have bravely resisted the British occupation of Ireland for many generations, and relay a message of gratitude for your continued efforts for the cause of Palestinian liberation. Despite the unrestrained brutality inflicted upon our people in Gaza and the constant escalations against the West Bank, our steadfast people remain defiant and refuse to submit to the will of the Zionist occupier. We salute our heroic martyrs, our injured compatriots, and those who are still being held in Zionist prisons, whose sacrifices are both immense and immortal. Israel's ongoing and escalating crimes in Palestine and across the region continue to take place with impunity and with the full support and approval of the USA and other imperial powers. While the Zionist entity speaks of the demilitarization and surrender of the Palestinian resistance, we reaffirm our right to armed struggle until the day of liberation, the return of all refugees, and the release of all Palestinian prisoners. We call upon all of our comrades abroad to confront the spectre of imperialism wherever it may raise its head, in the knowledge that to strike a blow against imperialism anywhere is in the service of the global revolution and the liberation of all oppressed people in the world. We thank you for your continued support and solidarity and wish you a productive and revolutionary Ard Fheis. Salah Hamouri. So we'll have a panel of speakers, and I'm going to introduce them one at a time, and don't have to introduce them while they're sitting here. So our first speaker is Brian McIntyre. Brian is currently is a community activist, political Irish language and Palestinian solidarity activist from West Belfast. Earlier this year, Brian took part in the global march to Gaza, a people-led movement that saw more than 4,000 people from around the world gather in Egypt with a view of applying international pressure to open the Rafah crossing and secure humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. As part of these efforts, Brian was detained before being deported back to Ireland. Brian will talk about his experience as part of the international humanitarian convoy, his solidarity activism, and what needs to be done at home to support the Palestinian cause. Brian McIntyre.
I was joking there 2 minutes ago that type this out, but probably won't even look at it. To be honest, I hate reading off pages. But Gurm Wagon Fissin Curry as Chapman Shaw was Curry Dusa, Evan Shaw new. Curry Kester Chapman Shaw just the Kenyal Lergas or Maw Hahi, August May, Mark Hudson, Glushak the Hui, Trasin Cairo, August and Roll of Eogum, so Glushak and John Yaron, Liberty Fada. So I'm kind of thanks very much for asking me to come here, and I was kind of asked more to come to kind of give an insight into my role and my part in the march to Gaza, part of why we went there, what actually happened while we were there, and why, at some reason, why we didn't necessarily achieve what we wanted to achieve out there, but at the same time, we still came back with a lot of hope in a lot of different ways. But anybody that doesn't know anything or too much about the march to Gaza, it was kind of an urgent international citizens' response to what we've all known now as probably one of the worst atrocities of the 21st century. We've all seen Gaza being demolished and relentlessly bulldozed the last 2 years especially. And it was kind of more in response to that there and to what we can do, not at home, but what we can do over there as well. Israel's ongoing and complete blockade on Gaza, mainly from 2007, has stopped the movement from people and goods in and out of Gaza, and it's a move really designed to isolate and suffocate people in the Gaza Strip. This wasn't the first time that Gaza has been shut off from the world to cause maximum damage to the lives of people in Gaza, and with the siege extending to air and sea, the Rafah crossing with Egypt continued to have a major impact on the Palestinians since its natural closure in 2008. The journey from Rafah to El Arish in Egypt has been a dream for so many Palestinians trying to escape this nightmare from 2008. Trying to escape the colonisation, the occupation, and the slaughter in the open air prison that we know is Gaza. Having followed the Palestinian struggle, supported the Palestinian resistance from a very young age, when it was put to me that there was an opportunity to go to Cairo, go to El Arish, and do something practically out there, naturally was yes, I'll go. I'll go and do whatever I can do. Despite what people may have thought would have been some fears about why to go there, naturally thought if there's an opportunity for us to go there, we'll go and do it, and we'll do what we can. And I think that's something that a lot of people kind of have struggled with, especially over the last 2 years, maybe thinking about what I'm doing. Am I marching every single Saturday here? Am I out taking things off shelves and shops in around Ireland? Is it actually doing anything? And that was kind of a struggle that I kind of contemplated every now and again, especially in the last 2 years. So when this opportunity came up, naturally just thought, yes, 100% I'll go. And at times we kind of forget the privileges that we have here, like the likes of being able to go into the shops and remove Israeli goods off the shelves, the likes of marching, blocking roads, blocking the likes of the BBC, any other companies in Belfast especially that's complicit and directly funding this genocide. We have a privilege that we can go out and protest, where a lot of people around the world, especially in Egypt, that don't have. So that's one of the privileges that we kind of forget that we have, and I think we need to use that to the maximum capacity that we have. At the time of organising the March to Gaza in June 2025, Gaza was suffering 19 months of genocide and now famine. I felt personally that I was in a comfortable position and a privileged position to be able to do something and to go out and do something practically that might make a change or even bring a wee bit of hope to the people in Gaza. Since March 2025, Israel's blocked all food, water, medical supplies from entering Gaza through the Rafah border. And if that didn't anger us enough to go out and try and prevent that, society's fucked, really. It really is. If we don't think that that's bad enough that we can go out and try and do something, if there's an opportunity to do it, then what's the point? The British government facilitate and fund the slaughter in Gaza. The Stormont government fund companies supplying the IOF to carry out this genocide, and the Free State government not only supply war bonds, but facilitate the US military through the airports in Shannon and Aldergrove. So we can hardly depend on anyone else to stand up for Palestinians, apart from ourselves. The March to Gaza is a global movement involving activists from over 54 countries across the globe, and there was 4 aims with it. The immediate and permanent opening of the Rafah crossing to allow entry of humanitarian aid, the complete withdrawal of Israeli military forces in Gaza, the reconstruction of Gaza under international supervision, and the end of the colonisation of Palestinians. The march aimed to put a spotlight on the shameful lack of action from the international community, while highlighting the urgent need to open the Rafah crossing immediately. Having not played any role in organising the march, I was part of a 40-strong Irish delegation aiming to go to Cairo and march to the Rafah border with citizens from every continent and corner of the world to stand together and demand that our governments follow international law as they are obliged to do, to put pressure on the international community to allow aid and hold in Israel to account for their war crimes and their shameful acts of genocide. Engaging in this march came with risks, obviously, and risks I was willing to take, as I mentioned before. But everyone in the Irish delegation had gone through various vetting proceedings and meetings concerning the risks involved. So we all we all knew what was involved in the trip, and we were all still determined to go and do anything that we could to help the people in Gaza and to highlight the need to open the Rafah border. And to be honest, we weren't naive, but we definitely didn't expect a Céad Míle Fáilte in Cairo airport and people standing with open arms, welcoming us in and go, yes, and having the likes of the RUC blocking the road to go facilitating the parade through Egypt up to the Rafah border. Definitely weren't naive enough to expect that there. But to be honest, definitely didn't expect the hostility and the brutality that was seen in Cairo and outside of Cairo. Even so, I had some doubts. Just lost my place there. I had some doubts of how the march would take place, even though we had countless meetings online with everyone that was going, because we had people from Dublin, Cork, Galway, all over Ireland. So most meetings were happening online, and we all had doubts about how we were going to carry this out, how we were going to go to Cairo, get out of Cairo with 4,000 or 5,000 people and march to the Rafah border. And to be honest, a lot of people were saying you're wasting your time going out there. And sometimes it did play in my mind, should we go? Are we going to achieve what we're going to achieve? Are we actually going to walk through the Sinai Desert? And reality is, if there's that 1% chance that we'll be able to do it, we should try and take it. And that's why I went. A 20-strong delegation from Belfast travelled through Pádraic on to Cairo on the 12th of June. And given that the Egyptian authorities didn't officially give the all clear for this march, they also didn't disapprove of it. So the organisers were continuing to lobby right up until us landing in Cairo. They were still lobbying with the authorities in Egypt to try and let the march go ahead. So even at that late stage, while we were flying into Cairo, there still wasn't 100% chance that we were even going to be able to gather, never mind march out of Egypt. But we were still going there with a bit of hope. And as soon as we were sitting in Dublin Airport before we got on the flight, the phones were going mad. People were flying out the night before, people on flights before us from all over the world. And some of the part of the Irish delegation were getting lifted on the other side of Cairo. So we were sitting a half an hour out in Dublin Airport, watching our phones, still having bits of doubts about how the march is going to take place and how well we'll get around this. And at the same time, there's still people landing in Cairo airport. As soon as they're stepping off onto the runway, they're being deported straight onto a plane to Istanbul or Athens. And that was another thing that kind of started the panic. There was 20 of us on the same flight going out from Dublin that day, and even to this day, I still don't know how we pretended not to know each other going through Dublin Airport, because we all know each other for the last 20 years, if not more. But it was still a scary experience, even thinking about, are we going to get lifted? Are we going to get deported? Are we going to get detained? What's going to happen when we get to Cairo? But at the same time, we're still getting on the plane, like we decided. As each hour passed, when we got into Cairo, and I don't know if anyone here has been in Cairo airport, it's huge. If you think Aldergrove's tiny. If you think a city airport's small, this is a million times bigger than Cairo airport is. Fucking huge. And when we landed, all you could see is thousands of people queuing, trying to get through security. And the only thing we could do is just get the head down, just get through security. And as soon as we get on the other side, half of the work's done. And that's what we were thinking, just get through a security and we'll be grand. So we were kind of in twos, and we were watching people going through queues, and as each person, and I just, even to this day, I still kept an eye on Paul Murphy, TD, because he was kind of the only one with a bit of profile out of us all. And if he was getting through, then it was kind of hope for all of us getting through. And I just remember just keeping an eye on him through this big crowd. And as soon as he slipped through, it was like, fuck, relief. So we all got through. And as soon as we got through the other side of security, we met two friends from Gaza who had been living in Cairo for the last 7 or 8 years. So they were able to get us transport down into downtown Cairo. They were able to sort us out with eSIMs and all that crack. And to this day, those two brothers are still being tortured and lifted every couple of days. The family home destroyed in Cairo just because, and it's one of those guilts that kind of hangs over some of us, that we put them in that danger, even though they offered. to help us any way they could. But as soon as we landed in downtown Cairo, we were kind of guided to these hotels that was booked for us, and they were recommended by the organisers. And it wasn't just the organisers in Ireland; it was the organisers throughout the whole movement. And as soon as we looked at it, there was thousands of people. And this is 11:30 at night, and there was thousands of people in the streets. This hotel, there was thousands hanging out the windows, and we were going, if we're here to pretend that we're not here for a march, how the fuck are we going to hide amongst all this madness? How are we white people from Ireland walking in amongst us? We're standing out like a sore thumb. And that's when the doubt started creeping in my head. I was like, this isn't going to happen. And the kind of plan was, where we were supposed to be staying was, there was meant to be buses picking up the next morning. And in some people's heads, they were thinking, this is just going to be like a nice wee trip. We wake up tomorrow morning, there's 10 buses turning up. We're all going to fill the 10 buses, get a nice wee trip down to the Sinai Desert, and then start walking. Fuck me. Wide awakening when we landed to this hotel. And see, to be honest, you probably couldn't even get a bus down that street. And that's some of the reasons why I still question why these hotels are recommended and who recommended them. But anyway, as soon as we went into the hotels, we were told straight away rooms aren't available. Even though they've been booked, we were shown the bookings, said rooms aren't available, but we might be able to find other hotels with friends in them. We'll let you stay. So all of a sudden, the group of 20 of us was split into 5 groups of 4, into 5 different hotels in and around downtown Cairo. And that was when we started going, fuck, do you know what, we're fucked here, basically. And as soon as we landed at our hotel after 4 hours, and we're talking 2:30 in the morning here, and we were meant to meet at 7 the next morning to get up and get ready for the walk. As soon as we locked the hotel, there was 2 boys standing at the end of each room. Went for a cup of tea, 2 boys followed us, the cup of tea down to reception. From day one, from the first minute we landed, we knew this isn't going to happen. So basically the next morning, we got the alarms, get up, got the backpacks ready, walked outside, place was dead. A message came through the signal from the main organisers saying that the buses had been compromised. There was no buses coming, and there'll be a message sent in the next 2 hours what the next move's going to be. So we were sitting in this hotel room, 4 of us, trying to contact the others, part of the Irish delegation, to find out what are we going to do. We were sitting waiting, and these messages coming through. Do we stay in the hotel? Do we book another night, try and book another night in this hotel and set it out for a lot of hours? Or do we just go and get a taxi somewhere to where we're meant to be? And anybody that doesn't know Egypt or any well with geography, the place we were going was about 4 or 5 hours away. So there was no chance of going out and waving down a taxi and going, will you take us to El Arish here? It wasn't as simple as that. So we sat down. As the minutes went on, the messages came through. There's no buses coming at all. Can everybody make their way to Ismailia, which is probably about 100 miles outside of Cairo? And the message was, and it was a very simple message, everybody just make their way to Ismailia before 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was it from the organisers. And from then on, there was nothing the whole day. So as you can imagine, we were all fucking in a state of panic. We were about going, do we try and go? Do we sit? Do we wait and see if people can get out and then make a move? Didn't know what to do. But anyway, we went out on the streets. We got backpacks. We went for a walk, because as soon as we walked, as I was saying, as soon as we walked out the hotel, there was people standing following you. There was actually a fella standing with his phone like this, videoing us, and he followed us around 5 different streets, filming us everywhere we went. As soon as we turned the corner, there was someone else taking photos and phoning. And that was a kind of experience the whole way. So it was, but we walked for 5 or 6 streets until we seen a wee cafe. We went in, we're like, do you know what? We'll sit down and actually think about what are we going to do here? The best option was probably book an Uber, to be honest. We couldn't get on public transport. Couldn't have waved the taxi down. And within 2 minutes of getting into the cafe, another 4 from the delegation came in to the cafe, and then another 6 came in. And all of a sudden, there was about 16 of us in this cafe going, fuck me, talk about drawing attention to yourself. But within the last couple of people coming in, 4 undercover cops came in. And when I say undercover, they walked in with normal clothes on, with a gun hanging out and a phone in their hand. So they weren't exactly undercover. And they sat down at the table right beside us without talking. And then another 2 came to the front door of the cafe. So at that stage, we were panicking on the phones, get an Uber. every Uber we phoned, it was cancelled 2 seconds before it was meant to arrive. We walked out of the cafe, tried to wave a couple of taxis down. As soon as we got into the first taxi, there was an argument between the taxi driver and the cop, and he told us to get out, basically. We got out of that taxi, waved the second one down, we were pulled out of the second taxi, we walked to the next corner to get in the third taxi, we managed to get into the back seat of it, and there was an exchange through Arabic between the cop, and for some reason, the cop let him go. Drove 2 streets away, and then we realised, fuck, he's probably told him where we're going. So we got out 2 streets away, waved down the fourth taxi, and managed to get out of Cairo. So at that stage, we're like, fuck me, this is a pain in the bollocks. This really isn't going to happen. On the way out of Cairo, we managed to get on the motorway, and as I was saying, it's 100 miles. 100 miles of where we were supposed to go. And at that stage, we were looking about, and there was just white taxis and cars whole way up, 6 lanes in the motorway, the whole way up, and it was people part of the movement. You could recognise spot us a mile away. Messages started coming through saying there was checkpoints about a half an hour up the road. We got through the first checkpoint, the second checkpoint, heavily armed. As soon as we got to that second checkpoint, there was messages coming through. If anyone's close to this checkpoint, turn and get out. Turn and go back to Cairo. You're going to be detained or deported. So at that stage, me and Kevin sitting in the taxi going, what the fuck do we do here? And we were trying to translate through the wee bit of Arabic that I had. With the taxi driver, he hadn't a clue what I was saying. And at that stage, he had drove in the six lanes. And if you imagine kind of the toll booth on the way to Dublin, that's what it was like. Only it turned out to be 10 across. So you can imagine the amount of cars and buses that were packed in this, and we managed to be sandwiched right in the middle of it. And you could see just about 5 or 6 cars ahead of us. Egyptian soldiers walking down, taking people out of the cars. There was messages coming through saying that there was part of the delegation were pulled out at the very front and they were on the side of the road, passports taken off them. And me and Kevin were like, it's just taxi man. Poor fella thought he was just getting a wee easy day out. Thought he was taking us to the pyramids or something. But at that stage, he managed to reverse out, get us back to Cairo. Thankfully, after reversing 2 miles down the motorway. And when we got back to the hotel, we managed to meet up with 4 others who didn't even manage to get out of Cairo at all. We were looking at all the footage on the side of the motorway, people being beat. There must have been about 400 managed to make it to the other side of that checkpoint before they were stopped, forced on the buses. There were whips used, and it wasn't just the Egyptian army. It was locals that were hired just to harass people and torture people, throwing 2 litres of water into people's faces on the side of the road. And that went on. There was two of the delegation ended up in hospital with injuries, and 2 others ended up in hospital in Cairo with heat stroke because they were left under the sun for 9 hours with no water. And it was just chaotic. But at the same time, this was making headline news. There was news all over the place. We were getting messages from back home saying this is on the news. So even though we didn't make it out to where we were meant to go for the walk, we were still highlighting this issue. And when you were looking around, seeing the amount of people from Tunisia, from Spain, all over the world, had travelled to Cairo for this, it was unbelievable. Just the feeling of having so many people there for the same reason, and to raise the issue, they opened the Rafah border. It was just something else. But at the same time, the few days that was spent in Cairo after that there was no point wasting time. There was no point going there for a holiday. We weren't there for a holiday. We were to raise the issue of opening the Rafah border for food and aid and medical supplies. So what we did was use this to our advantage. We have people from 54 countries around the world here, all in the one city for the next couple of days. So we started kind of meeting up, setting up networks between each other, and setting up the global movement, which led to the 5-day protests in Brussels 2 weeks afterwards, and which led to more conversations about how many boats to go on the latest flotillas. So as I said, even though we didn't get out as far as El Arish to walk to the Rafah border, we still managed to set up those networks globally, that we can put pressure on Israel in a global movement and not just at home. And that was kind of the advantages that we took back from it there. We didn't want to come home disheartened, thinking we went out there, thinking we were going to march and camp for 9 days and have a bit of laugh in between, even though it was a very serious issue. But no, coming home, it was definitely worthwhile. when you look at the amount of networks that we've set up with people all over the world, and it's continuing now, where we're able to provide support for each other, we're able to link up with each other globally all around Europe as well, to set up movements where we can hurt Israel financially more than anything at this stage. And to be honest, anyone, and a lot of people have said, I think you wasted your time going out there. I can 100% say that we didn't. 100% say that we didn't waste any time at all. But yes, outside of that there, what we did come home with was we need to keep pressure on Israel, and we need to keep pressure on them financially. And that was one of the main objectives coming out of Egypt. If we can kind of coordinate a movement all over the world to bring Israel's economy to the ground and stop the Zionist state, then it was definitely a worthwhile trip going out to Cairo. So, Gurmila Mayaguf.
And our next speaker is Ryan Kemp. Ryan is a political activist and member of Lasair Dhearg from Armagh. He volunteered in the Ada refugee camp during the summer, where he met with a range of groups. He saw firsthand the impact that the Zionist regime was having on the Palestinian people, and heard the stories of defiance, resistance, and calls for proactive international solidarity and support for the resistance. Ryan will speak about his experience in Palestine, what the groups that he met were saying, and what we should be doing at home in support of the resistance. So, really good boss, Ryan.
So as Chopper mentioned, I spent a few weeks back in August volunteering with the Ladsy Centre and the International Solidarity Summer Camp in the occupied West Bank. I was based primarily in the Ida refugee camp in Bethlehem, but also had the chance to visit other towns, cities and refugee camps across the West Bank. For to put simply, I just went out there because I wanted to expose myself a bit to the occupation, just in a way you're not going to get in the media, but just amongst the people who live it every day. So the team at the Ladsy Centre, under incredibly difficult circumstances, put together an intense and eye-opening schedule to give us a real look into daily life under occupation, the fear and the restrictions that are in place, but also the defence and the remarkable resistance of the Palestinian people, both cultural and armed. It was one thing to see this in Bethlehem, but visiting other places in the West Bank was what really drove the point home. One of the places that really shocked me the most was Hebron. Walking through Hebron, I saw one of the most disturbing examples of occupation anywhere on earth. The city is completely militarily controlled and have the Palestinians living like cattle in an open-air cage. They can't access parts of their own city. Certain roads are off limits purely because of their ethnicity, and everywhere you look, cameras track them and checkpoints dominate the streets. Life for the Palestinians living here is always dangerous, controlled, and completely dehumanising. At the checkpoints, AI facial recognition technology identifies who is Palestinian and assigns them a security threat rating. So if your name comes up as red or orange, it could mean shoot to kill orders, even for something minor, just like talking back. These classifications are arbitrary and enforced at the discretion of the soldier on the spot, whoever that happens to be. It's apartheid in every sense, and the system of classifying people by ethnicity through checkpoints and technology is straight out of the playbook used in Nazi Germany. Leaving the occupant forces out of it, these Palestinians in this city also live alongside a minority settler population who terrorise them as well. We walked along streets where settlers were living in the second floors above them. These settlers steal homes, throw rocks, acid, general rubbish, and sometimes even human excrement at the Palestinians living below them. And they do so with complete impunity, fully protected by the Israeli occupation forces. Families on the lower floors have had to build cages with tarps going overhead to defend themselves from the settlers living in the higher levels of these buildings. Another shocking part of Hebron is the Al Khalil Mosque. This mosque gives another stark example. Half of it has been stolen and turned into a synagogue. And on any given day, a foreign Jewish family can book the mosque for a bar mitzvah. And on that day, the Israeli occupation forces can storm the mosque at gunpoint, order everyone out, and turn a sacred place of worship into a party space, drinking, filming, and vandalising, all out in full view. The message in Hebron is clear. Palestinians have no rights in their own city, no control over their sacred spaces, and no protection whatsoever from settler violence. Another place that really brought home the cruelty of the occupation for me was Tulkarem and Nur Shams refugee camps in the north of the West Bank. These camps have both been centres of Palestinian resistance for generations, and because of that, they're being punished relentlessly. This year alone, tens of thousands of people have been displaced as the occupant forces tore through the camps, destroying homes and infrastructure under the guise of security operations. We visited the Al-Ada Centre, where we met a group of community health workers, most of them young women who'd been on the front lines during these raids. They showed us footage of the destruction and told us how when occupant forces were shooting anyone who dared to step outside, these young women were out rescuing any injured and evacuating vulnerable families. The courage of these women standing unarmed in the face of Israeli tanks and gunfire is something that will never leave me, and these health workers will be always one of the first people I think about when I think about Palestine. They actually brought us to meet some of the displaced people, displaced families that were sheltering in a local mosque that were from the camps. So we got to the mosque, there was just no electricity, so the place was just suffocating with heat. And in the corner of the mosque, there was just a woman lying there. There was just a few sheets strung up to give her a bit of privacy, and she'd actually just given birth. I think it was just a week or so earlier. Just right there in the mosque, complete lack of postnatal care, little to no comfort for her or the child. It was just fucking seriously hard to take, looking at the newborn and looking at the children, just realising this is their childhood. But this is what the occupation looks like. And despite all this, the people there never once spoke about defeat. They spoke with complete dignity, and they weren't asking for our sympathy. They were only asking for our solidarity and for us to take our struggle seriously. I'll just have to mention, whenever we were leaving that mosque, one of the displaced women followed us out with a bag full of 14 bottles of water. Like, this is displaced people who have less than nothing, and they just want to make sure they're taking care of us. I have to say, it was one of the most profound experiences in my life when that happened. So just when meeting with different organisations in the West Bank, I did really notice a real disconnect between Western activism and how Palestinians view how useful it really can be sometimes. Just an example could be Ireland's Occupied Territories Bill. For many people in Ireland and Europe, the bill feels like a strong moral act, refusing to buy from illegal Israeli settlements and standing up for international law. It's seen as a peaceful step of solidarity, and while it is a positive step, the bill alone cannot address the broader realities of the occupation. It doesn't address restrictions on movement, access to land, or military control over Palestinian communities. While it's a meaningful gesture, it cannot replace political action that directly challenges the structures of occupation or supports Palestinian resistance. There was a Palestinian lawyer I met with in particular who was mostly unimpressed. She saw the act as symbolic rather than impactful, something that makes people abroad feel good but doesn't really change the situation on the ground. Many more Palestinians feel that the solidarity movement in the West, a lot of times they like these gestures, but they don't like resistance. The organisations I met with always reiterated that under international law, Palestinians have the right to resist this occupation, but they feel completely unsupported by the international community in exercising this right. Even when they're doing this non-violently through channels like the International Criminal Court, we saw this in Al-Haq. For anyone who isn't familiar with Al-Haq, they've been designated as a terrorist organisation by the State of Israel, but they're really just a human rights organisation. They're doing vital work in the West Bank and Gaza, and just 2 weeks after we visited Al-Haq's office, they were actually hit with sanctions by the US for exposing Israeli war crimes to the ICC. So from their point of view, Western countries condemn the occupation but won't take real political or economic action against it. Symbolic measures let Westerners feel morally superior without actually challenging the power dynamics. Palestinians don't want pity or token activism. They want political backing and solidarity for them to be able to exercise their right to resist. So while Western activists often celebrate these symbolic wins, Palestinians are asking for something a lot deeper than that. They're asking for the recognition of their right to resist. They want real action that would shift the balance of power and not just gestures that make the West feel righteous. The type of support we give here in Ireland has to empower Palestinian agency to lead their own struggle and decide for themselves how to fight this occupation, rather than just acts of symbolic support from afar. So after my experience in Palestine, it's clear to me what is needed isn't symbolic support. It's direct action that actually hits the occupation where it hurts. Groups like Palestine Action have shown how to take the fight directly to the companies that arm the occupation, and they've proven that sustained direct action works. And it's not just happening across the water. Closer to home, Derry Socialists and Republicans for Palestine are showing what real solidarity looks like. Not with empty statements, but with consistent, organised, direct action. They remind us that our role as solidarity activists isn't demanding sympathy, but to build support for resistance and liberation. And the same can be said for ourselves in Lasair Dhearg. Earlier in the week, to mark the anniversary of the Alexa flood, a group of our activists scaled the scaffold in Belfast city centre to drop a banner declaring loud and clear, Palestine has a right to resist. Actions like this that are visible and uncompromising are part of a wider movement that refuses to let the occupation go unchallenged. and makes it clear that solidarity is about supporting resistance, not just offering sympathy. What's happening in Palestine isn't a humanitarian issue, it's a liberation struggle. And Lasair Dhearg's position is clear. We support the resistance. We support the Palestinian people, backing whatever strategies they choose to win them liberation in return.
Tyrone is a professional boxer from West Belfast and has been a sporting ambassador for Ireland and the Palestinian cause around the world. He is passionate about Palestine and Palestinian solidarity, and he uses his influence and platforms to highlight the illegal occupation and the ongoing genocide. He has visited Palestine several times, most recently this summer, to train local people in the Ackley gym in the Ida refugee camp, and saw firsthand the impact that the Zionist regime is having on the Palestinian people, including the confiscation of land for illegal settlements and the denial of water on entire populations. Tyrone will share his experience of his visit to the West Bank and the impact that the illegal Zionist occupation is having. So big Bill for us for
Yeah, as I said, I was in West Bank a few months ago, but I was also in West Bank a few years ago, long before October 7th. And the biggest difference there was from there to then is nothing. There was an apartheid then, there's an apartheid now. They're still being treated as bad as they were. Decades they've been treated this way. There's separate roads for Israelis and Palestinians to distinguish who's who. There's different coloured license plates for Palestinians and Israelis. There's blockades on the roads so they can close the city and not let the Palestinians leave whenever they wish. There's checkpoints. There's apartheid walls scattered across the city to make it extremely hard for the Palestinians to even move in their own cities, to move to different cities, to see their families. Even the first time when I arrived in the Ada camp, the first thing I noticed that there's 6,000 people in this camp, and there was one running water tap for the whole of camp. You'll see out in the morning there was a line, there was a queue of kids filling water buckets to bring them home to their families. And this wasn't because there was no water in Palestine, it's because Israel's playing God, choosing who can drink water, who can't drink water, who can have water, running water in the house, who can't, who can have electric, who can't, who can get out of their city and who can't. While I was there, the first week that I was there, 5 minutes from where I was staying, there was 2 kids shot by an IDF, barely breathing, and while an ambulance was trying to rush through the streets to save their lives, it was blocked off by the IDF, and the IDF opened fire on their kids and killed them, made sure they were dead. And the very next day in the Lasair Centre, there was kids, 7 years old, proper kids, sitting there getting taught what to do if their mothers are shot, if their fathers are shot, how to help the wound, who to call, what to do if tear gas is thrown at them. And these are kids that should be learning how to ride bikes, not how to help the wounded, how to help their loved ones. The IDF are scum. Ceasefire, no ceasefire, they're still scum. The ceasefire doesn't erase the tens of thousands of kids that were killed. A ceasefire doesn't bring back all the innocent men and women that were killed. A ceasefire doesn't rebuild all the hospitals, the schools, the mosques, the houses that were bombed. Israel were evil long before October 7th, and a ceasefire or not, Irish will always voice their solidarity and stand against oppression. We know what it's like to live our life under occupation. And while Palestine and Ireland is occupied, we all have our part to play in liberating them. Cathaoirleach.